How would you feel if stealing a piece of bread meant losing your hand, or if you were accused of witchcraft, tied to a stake, and burned alive while the crowd cheered? What if I told you in the medieval world, wives were considered the legal property of their husbands? Justice was not blind. It bowed to the rich and crushed the poor. Today these punishments sound unthinkable, even barbaric. But in medieval Europe, they weren't exceptional. They were normal. Pain was justice. Suffering was law. And the public was invited to watch every moment of it. Welcome to the brutal truth of medieval punishment. If you're curious about the parts of history no one talks about, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because the next stories get even more unbelievable. In the medieval world, punishment was not just a response to crime. It was a display of divine vengeance, a form of spiritual purification, and a warning seared into flesh and bone. Justice was never blind. It was watching, and it was cruel. To understand medieval punishment, you must first understand that crime was sin, and sin threatened not just the sinner, but the entire community. If one man stole, God's wrath might fall on the whole village, with plague, crop failure, or death. So justice had to be swift, public, and painful, not only to punish but to purify. A man accused of theft might be strapped into the pillory, his head and hands locked in place for hours or days. Villagers would spit on him, hurl dung, dead animals, and abuse. He was not a man anymore. He was a warning nailed to a post. The cucking stool was for women, gossips, scolds, wives who spoke too much, bound to a wooden chair and dunked in freezing river water over and over until silence, submission, or death. These were not punishments for crimes. These were punishments for disobedience. But shame was only the beginning. Real punishment began when flesh met iron. For stealing, a hand might be cut off at the wrist with a cleaver. In some towns, the nose or ears were sliced away. Permanent disfigurement to mark a criminal forever. Branding irons were heated until they glowed red, then pressed against skin to carve letters into human meat. T for thief, F for forger. The mark burned deeper than the bone. Lying under oath could mean the removal of the tongue. Adultery might end in castration, or worse. The body was a message board, and punishment was the writing. In the medieval mind, pain revealed the truth, and the most feared truth came from ordeal. It was called trial by ordeal, and it was exactly what it sounds like, a test of survival, pain, and fear, used to determine guilt or innocence. The ordeal of fire. A blacksmith heats an iron rod until it glows white. The accused, man or woman, steps forward, eyes wide with terror. They are told to carry the burning iron in their bare hands, walk 3 paces, and place it down on an altar. If the wounds are healing cleanly, they are declared innocent. If the flesh is raw, infected, or blistering, they are guilty. That's all it takes. The ordeal of boiling water was also a way of finding the truth. A stone or ring is dropped into the bottom. The test: reach in and pull it out. Innocent skin will not rot, they said, but guilty flesh will decay. But trial by ordeal was not enough when confession was needed. That's where torture began. The rack was used, a wooden frame, rollers at both ends, ropes fastened to wrists and ankles. The accused is laid flat, stripped unstressed, tied down. Then the rollers turn. Slowly, their body stretches beyond its limits. Ligaments tear, shoulders dislocate. The rollers turn again and again, until joints are ruined forever or breath runs out. This was justice. Another method is the thumbscrews, a small box with a vise and a screw. The prisoner places their fingers inside, or more often, they're forced in. The screw tightens. The Pear of Anguish. A metal object shaped like a bulb, with petals that open when the screw is turned. It was inserted into the mouth, the rectum, or the vagina, depending on the accused's crime. And if death followed, the priest would say, "Better for one soul to perish than for the devil to remain unpunished." Strappado was also used. The prisoner is hoisted into the air by ropes tied behind their back, arms pulled tight, then dropped. The shoulders tear loose, the joints rip, then they're lifted again and dropped again. Some confess after the first drop. Some hold out longer. In the medieval world, to be a woman was, by default, to be considered weaker, less rational, and always a potential source of moral corruption. So justice didn't protect her. It controlled her. And when that control slipped, punishment came hard and fast. Women suspected of seduction, adultery, or disobedience could be sentenced to tongue removal, branding, shaving, or banishment. Wives were considered the legal property of their husbands. A man could beat his wife with a stick, so long as it wasn't thicker than his thumb. If she fought back, the law might side with him. If she tried to run, that was abandonment. There was no escape in widowhood. A woman without a husband became suspect. To be born a woman in medieval Europe was to be born into a legal system designed to monitor, restrain, and if necessary, destroy. By the 17th and 18th centuries, cracks began to form in the scaffold. The gallows no longer inspired obedience. It inspired disgust. Philosophers questioned pain. Writers exposed the cruelty. The public scaffold was gone. But the spirit of domination through pain lingered, transformed, refined, hidden. For centuries, justice was not blind. It was violent, public, and deliberate. It burned names into skin. It tore tongues from mouths. It silenced, crushed, and erased. This was not the dark corner of history. This was history, and its scars, still invisible in the modern court, remain. You may not hear the chains now, you may not see the fire, but the ground remembers, and the body remembers everything.